What's up, guys? What up? What up? Hayden Schaap here. I'm just returning, talking about the stuff that I really love and documenting my own learnings, which has been so much fun for me and like so impactful. So the stuff that I love talking about and I'm documenting, and I'm directing it really at the people that work with me, my sales reps and sales leaders, and but honestly, this applies to everyone, and that's how you know if something is good, if it passes the stress test of true principles, because it applies to everything. The same principles will apply to a successful, wildly successful family, to a wildly successful business, and or anything that you care about, that you're, or personal development in general. So I talk about truth-centric persuasion and influence, becoming the most persuasion version of yourself, truth-centric character development, and truth-centric leadership. So with that, if you like this stuff, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, to my YouTube channel. If you're watching this video, make sure, please comment the stuff that's actually like impactful to you, that is standing out, so that I can not only know what's standing out, but learn along with you too. Like maybe you're catching insights that I'm not. And I'd love to be along the journey with anyone that's actually along the journey with me too, because this really is more of a journey for me than even like being an authority on anything. I don't believe that I am on anything, but I am trying to learn every day and grow. And so I'm doing what Covey says, which is study with the intent to teach. Audio, make sure that you download and leave a 5-star review if you like this stuff on Spotify and Apple, and then share with 3 or 4 people that might be in need of the stuff that we're about to talk about today. What we are going to talk about today is last episode of 7 Habits, we talked about this really powerful concept of what constitutes our center or our true north. The center or our true north is the thing that we make decisions based off of always, right? All of us are putting first things first. We are always making decisions based off of the things that we value most. The question, though, becomes, well, how do you align your life so that you are valuing things that are actually optimal to bring about the most happiness, fulfillment, long-term joy? And really what Covey says is meet the 4 needs that we have as human beings. And those 4 needs are he calls them the 4 L's. So we all have a need to live. That's economic, essentially. We have this basic need to be sustainably live. We have a need to love. That's socio-emotional. So we have a need to love in relationships and contribute to relationships. We have a need to learn, so to grow as human beings and individuals, and to progress psychologically and emotionally. And we also have a need, and this is the last one, and Covey argues that this actually transcends what Maslow argued during his life was the human's hierarchy of needs. It goes above the hierarchy of self, and that is we have a need to, the final L, leave a legacy. So if those are our 4 needs, then we're trying, all of like us in the world, we are trying to fulfill those needs through something, some center that we value most. And so Covey talks a lot about that idea, and you can go back to this last episode to talk about how to see what we were talking about with what makes up a center. Well, a center gives us security, it gives us safety. So like if my family is my center, that's going to give me safety. But the problem is, what if my family changes, or there's a death in my family, or they change their opinion about me, or I do something to disappoint them, or whatever? I'm going to drive everything from my family. I'm going to drive my security, as Covey says, my guidance, wisdom, and power. That's what our center gives us. It gives us security, it gives us guidance, it gives us wisdom, it gives us power. And that those things are all interrelated. So they're kind of the independent or interdependent concepts. As Covey says here, the 4 factors of a center, security, guidance, wisdom, and power, they work like interwoven together. Security and clear guidance bring true wisdom, right? Wisdom becomes the spark or the catalyst to release the direct power, to release and direct power. When these 4 factors are present together, harmonized and enlivened by each other, they create a great force of a noble personality, a balanced character, and a beautifully integrated individual. So then the question becomes like, well, what about alternative centers? Because he starts with the preface of like, what would a life based off of truth look like? A life based off of true principles. Well, you would have this harmonized, noble personality, this balanced character, not balanced in time, but balanced in intent, balanced in experience, balanced in purpose, right? A beautifully integrated individual. So now what we're going to talk about in this episode is about alternative centers. We did touch on this last time, but not explicitly from the book here. So alternative centers. And guys, like my sales leaders listening to this, you need to pay attention to this stuff. All of the people in the personal development landscape are missing this stuff right here. They're missing a lot, right? Everyone shouts from the rooftops, screams from the hills about becoming an independent person and being able to choose the life that you want and being able to get the results that you want. And then they put on a pedestal fame, money, wealth, achievement. But what if that stuff is not based off of a true center, a true north that actually brings real happiness? That is when you start living in hell, because every step that you take up the ladder gets you to the wrong place faster, right? So that's why it's important when we're talking about this stuff to like really realize that we are all basing our lives off of some center, and the way to happiness and meaning is to massive, like Covey says, what does he say here? As we focus our efforts here at the center of principles, we achieve the greatest result. Massive. I wrote down a quote from my study this morning when I was listening to and reading through Principle-Centered Leadership again. And Covey says, check this out. He goes, if you want to make small improvements in your lives, in your relationships, in your families, in your organizations, work on your behavior. Or perhaps shape up your attitude a little, get a little more positive, cheerful, or work harder. But if you want to make major improvements, quantum leaps in performance in your social life, family life, in your organizational lives, don't work on your behavior or your attitudes. Work on your paradigms, the way you view the world, and the way you are and see the world. Your attitudes and your behaviors and the results that flow will naturally flow from your paradigms, the way you view the world. And Covey says that the more accurately our paradigms can match, the more accurately the way we see the world, the maps that we use can actually match how the world truly operates and is, which it operates on true principles of effectiveness. That is actually what brings alignment, that brings us massive joy, success, results, improvement, and output in every aspect of our lives that we actually care about. Business, family, everything, right? So that's why this stuff is so important, guys. And it's important that you do this stuff in your personal lives. It's important that you do this with your teams and the people that you're leading. It's really important that you do this with your family and your friends, and that you love and care about them in this way. Because when you abandon the things that matter most to you in pursuit of the things that actually you can't take with you, then that's when it becomes, like I'm saying, hell. All right, so we're going to talk about alternative centers here, because this is super interesting. I really love Covey's take on this. Each of us has a center, though this is where it gets it's kind of eye-opening, I think, and personally. Each of us has a center, though we usually don't recognize it as such. So yeah, we'd like to base our life off of like truth, right? We'd like to live an optimal life or whatever, but we have to realize that like each of us already has a center, although we don't recognize it as such. Neither do we recognize the all-encompassing effects of that center on every aspect of our lives. So whatever our center is has all-encompassing effects on every aspect of our lives. Hope you guys are following me with this. If not, like go back and listen to some of the other episodes. Let's briefly examine several centers or core paradigms people typically have for a better understanding of how they affect us, these four fundamental dimensions, and ultimately the sum of life that flows from them. Okay, so now we're going to get into like, okay, what are all the alternative centers that might seem okay, and that we for sure are basing our lives off of something in this realm of these alternative centers, even if we're trying to become truth-centered or principle-centered, truth-centric. It's very likely that we actually are not, and that it's a spectrum, as Covey says. Okay, so let's briefly examine several centers or core paradigms people typically have for a better understanding of how they affect the four fundamental dimensions, meaning security, guidance, wisdom, and power, and ultimately the sum of life that flows from them. Spouse-centeredness is the first one. This is an interesting one. And I see this with a lot of people that I not only work with, but myself included, because I love my wife. I absolutely love my spouse. So is being spouse-centered bad? Well, I know a lot of people of the same faith as me that would say that it's the lo más, it's the ultimate, the end all be all. You must be spouse-centered. There is no other way to live. But let's see what Covey says about it. Marriage can be the most intimate, most satisfying, the most enduring, growth-producing of human relationships. It might seem natural and proper to be centered on one's husband or wife, right? But experience and observation tell a different story. Over the years, I've been involved in working with many troubled marriages, and I have observed a certain thread weaving itself through almost every spouse-centered relationship I have ever encountered. That thread is strong, emotional dependence. As Covey says, our goal is not to become independent even, it's become interdependent. And the only way you can become interdependent, meaning have a strong synergistic relationship that produces the highest amount of results, is if you become an independent person and both of you are independent people and make choices of interdependence within that relationship. However, what Covey says is that in his work with so many marriages, the things is that he finds that the thread is so strong of emotional dependence when you become spouse-centered. If our sense of emotional, and why is that, right? If our sense of emotional worth comes primarily from our marriage, then we become highly dependent upon that relationship. We become vulnerable to the moods and the feelings, the behavior, the treatment of our spouse, or to any external event that may impinge on that relationship. A new child, in-laws, economic setbacks, social successes, and so forth. Man, very, very interesting, okay? When responsibilities increase and stresses come in the marriage, we tend to revert to the scripts we were given as we were growing up, which is usually how, for me, I know it's how I saw my own parents interacted, or how, if I was raised by, let's say I was raised by a grandparent or something, it's how I saw them interact. It's how I was raised to it's the paradigms that I was given by my own parents is typically how you treat and look at your relationship with your spouse. But so does our spouse. When responsibilities increase and stresses come in the marriage, which, if you're getting into this, especially look, you guys that work with me, right? What we do is incredibly difficult. And if you're married, it's even more difficult. Because now you have to go not only do something that is ungodly hard, but you have to do it with someone else that's willing to support you, that doesn't see you all day. It's but newsflash for you, that's actually how everything in life is going to be anyway. You can't escape how difficult it is to go achieve high goals in a sales organization or in anything that you want. Otherwise, you just relinquish your, just bow down to mediocrity if that's too hard for you. Or do what Covey's saying, which is, recognize what Covey's saying, first of all, which is when responsibilities increase and stresses come in your marriage, which they will, we tend to revert to the scripts we were given when we were growing up. But so does our spouse. So if you're emotionally dependent on your spouse, that's where it gets bad, is because they're also reverting to the scripts that they were given when they've grown up. And that's why, in my opinion, that's actually why divorce typically happens, is because the one person or both of them are so dependent that they can't cope with how their spouse reverts to those scripts that they were given. And because they were different than what maybe I have, right? If the way Sarah handles stress is different than me, then, and I'm not cool with that because I'm a dependent person on her, and I'm not only am I responding in a certain way to the stress, but she also is as well, and I'm dependent on her emotions. So now it's this freaking chaos of a hurricane in your life. Your spouse reverts to those scripts that they were passed on from their, wherever as well. Those scripts are usually different ways of handling financial, child discipline, or in-law issues come to the surface. When these deep-seated tendencies combine with the emotional dependency in the marriage, the spouse-centered relationship reveals all its vulnerabilities. Let's listen to that again. Powerful. So when stresses increase in your relationships, and this could be any type of relationship, right? Any relationship that you're actually dependent on to continue survival, and a spouse-centered relationship would be one of them. It's likely that you will respond in different ways. So different ways of handling the financial, child discipline, in-law issues. When these deep-seated tendencies combined with the emotional dependency in the marriage, because you're spouse-centered, the spouse-centered relationship reveals all its vulnerabilities. And then what? Then what does he say? When we are dependent on the person with whom we are in conflict, We need and conflict. Both need and conflict are compounded. That's interesting. I actually never thought of it that way, or recognized what he was actually saying there. Love, hate, overreactions, fight or flight tendencies, withdrawal, aggressiveness, bitterness, resentment, and cold competition are some of the usual results. Ever been in a competition with your loved one, with someone in your relationship, your boyfriend or girlfriend or your spouse? You feel like you're in competition with them somehow to be right? Typically because of dependency. Man, when these occur, so when withdrawal, aggressiveness, bitterness, resentment, etc. occur, competition, when these setbacks occur because you're spouse dependent, we tend to fall even further back on background tendencies and habits in an effort to justify and defend our own behavior, and we attack our spouse's behavior. Gosh, I'll just let that sink in. Inevitably, anytime we're too vulnerable, we feel the need to protect ourselves from further wounds. So we resort to sarcasm, cutting humor, criticism. Ever been in a situation where a spouse just criticizes their wife or husband whenever you're with them? That honestly drives me freaking nuts. Is when I'm with my friends and their spouse, whenever that person is out of the room, just starts criticizing their wife or husband. I can't even stand it. If those of you that have been with me in those situations, I'll typically go up and go to the bathroom and take a breather for a second just to realize that I need to calm down, because I get so upset about it. Because I can't stand it. Actually brings back a lot of memories for me that are just not kind from some situations that I experienced when I was younger. But mostly though, it reveals this really powerful dependency that the spousal relationship has on each other. And so it's sad because even though they don't realize it, it's like individuals crying out for help because they can't help but base their emotional feelings and self-worth off of something about their spouse. And so then it's it's complicated. I'm not going to even go into it further because I want to get to more stuff here. Anyway, each partner tends to wait on the initiative of the one or the other for love. So true. Only to be disappointed, but also confirmed as to the rightness of the accusations made. Gosh dang it. There's only phantom security in such a relationship when all appears to be going well. Guidance is based on the emotion of the moment. Wisdom and power are lost in the counterdependence or the codependence of negative interactions. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so that's spouse-centeredness. That's why spouse, basing your worth and security, guidance, wisdom, and power off of your spouse as a center is bad. Okay, what's the other alternative center? Family-centeredness, okay? And you might say, okay, and especially in my church, and a lot of you guys that I work with are members of my church, or a lot of people listening to this might be. Or you might be from a Christian strong background. Or if not, hopefully you have good moral values. If you weren't listening to this stuff and you didn't, you probably won't be listening still. So most people would say, oh, being family-centered is really good, right? That's noble. Au contraire. There's some nuance to this though, right? Okay, so family-centeredness. Another common center is the family. This too may seem to be natural and proper as an area of focus and deep investment. It provides great opportunities for deep relationships, for loving, for sharing, for much of what makes life worthwhile. But as a center, it ironically destroys the very elements necessary to family success. That is freaking wild because, okay, so I just had a thought crystallize in my mind, all right? Man, I'm just so... I get jazzed whenever I start having these cool breakthroughs, which I've had, I feel almost every session. Okay, so follow me here, all right? There's this scripture where Jesus says, "He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it," right? So it's almost like when you chase two rabbits, you can't have both of them because they so quickly escape your fingertips. Why I'm saying that is you can't pretend to base your life off of true principles and things that are most important, and also base your life off of a center that is not true principles. However, but because oftentimes we do that, we want to be family-centered because family-centeredness is really important, isn't it? Family success, isn't family success important? Well, in order to be have family success, I have to be family-centered. No, that's not what Covey says. Covey says that by being family-centered, it ironically destroys the very elements that are necessary to family success. So many of us become family-centered because we want to have family success, but what Covey says is that's dangerous to base your security, your guidance in life, your wisdom, and your power. It's dangerous to have family success as a center or family-centeredness because that actually squashes the ability to have results of a successful family. And here's why. People who are family-centered get their sense of security or personal worth from the family tradition and culture and the family reputation. Interesting, fascinating there. Thus, they become vulnerable to changes in the tradition or culture and to any influences that would affect that reputation. Family-centered parents do not have the emotional freedom, the power to raise their children with their ultimate welfare truly in mind. Oh, jeez. Freaking like shots fired there, right? So if all you care about is the family name, then you don't actually have what, according to Covey, okay, if all you care about is the family name, the reputation, the tradition or the culture of the family, those types of parents do not have the emotional freedom, the power to raise their children with their their children's ultimate welfare in mind. If they derive their own security from the family, their need to be popular with their children may override the importance of a long-term investment in their children's growth and development. Or they may be focused on the proper and correct behavior of the moment. Any behavior that they consider improper threatens their security as parents or a security of the family. They become upset because they have to save face for the family name or for the reputation or for what they view as the ideal of the family, guided by the emotions of the moment, spontaneous reaction to the immediate concern rather than the long-term growth and development of the child. They may yell or scream. They may overreact and punish out of bad temper. They tend to love their children conditionally, making them emotionally dependent or counter-dependent and rebellious. Frick, that's crazy. That's wild. Huh. Dang, so many thoughts in my mind about that right now. Fascinating. Okay, so that's family-centeredness, right? And hopefully, if you're offended by that, maybe dive into this a little bit and evaluate your own paradigms a second, because I know for myself, it's interesting to evaluate my own paradigms here because I really have to check myself. I find myself almost like wanting to take offense or feel bad about the centers that I currently have and am trying to escape from to put them on true principles so that I can actually have success in those things that I care about, which do involve family, which do involve many of the things that he talks about here, that when solely focusing on those as your center is bad. That's what makes it bad. So what's the next one? Money-centeredness, right? Another logical and extremely common centers to people's lives is making money. Economic security is basic to one's opportunity to do much in any other dimension. In a hierarchy of continuum of needs, physical survival and financial security always comes first. Other needs are not even activated until the basic need is satisfied, at least minimally. That's kind of interesting. So I like how at the beginning of every center here, Covey basically prefaces it by saying now listen, I'm not saying that making money is bad. Now listen, I'm not saying that loving your family is bad. Now listen, I'm not saying that loving your spouse is bad. However, beware. There's a nuance here, right? Really, really fascinating. Most of us face economic worries. What's the main cause of any divorce? Typically disagreement or stress from finances. Most of us face economic worries. Many forces in the wider culture can and do act upon our economic situation, causing or threatening such disruption that we often experience concern and worry that may not always rise to the conscious surface. So basically saying that, economic factors are so powerful that we don't actually realize how much they might concern us. Sometimes there are apparently noble reasons given for making money, such as the desire to care for one's family. These things are important, but to focus on money making as a center will bring about its own undoing. I have kind of an interesting thing here. So part of my justification for working so much over the last several years, and like really listen to this, guys that are ambitious, that are like you people that are ambitious listening to this, especially that work for me, listen to how important what I'm about to say is. I justified the hours that I was working and the time I was not with Sarah, or the time that I was not actually making my, in short periods of time making my marriage a priority, in the name of the fact that my marriage was the priority, because that's why I was working so hard, right? To make the money to get us out of whatever situation, or to put us in a situation to do good, and et cetera, et cetera. But there came a time when I realized, like, hey, if I stopped working right now, I would actually be good for like forever. This was a couple years ago. I was like, I literally have taken my capacity to earn like X, millions of dollars a year for forever. Like, I've achieved that already. So like, can I really claim that by working as hard as I am and not putting effort into the marriage that my spouse needs, can I really claim, if I were to claim that that's actually true? Can I really claim that I have her best interest in mind when I've already satisfied our basic economic needs? So, no, I can't. And so Sarah and I had this discussion, and we basically talked about this idea of like, okay, well, if we've already satisfied like our family needs, then our family basic needs with how I'm working, like, what's the justification for continuing to work this way? And we kind of tried to uncover like the purpose and the meaning behind it all. And it's been really fascinating to do that together, because we realized that like when you're doing it for economics alone, there's so much emptiness in that, because it's actually pretty easy to satisfy basic economic needs. And if I'm being totally honest, it's so easy to make a large quantity of money that people would view as prestigious. It's so easy to do that, truly, that if you don't believe that it's true to make a lot of money, and so therefore you dedicate your life to focusing on that because your family never had it or whatever, you really do run the risk of becoming money-centered. And becoming money-centered even when you're poor. And that's really, I think, really bad. Listen to what Covey says here. That's really fascinating. Sometimes there are apparently noble reasons to make money, obviously. Suppose I derive much of my security from my employment or from my income or net worth. Since many factors affect these economic foundations, I become anxious and uneasy, protective and defensive about anything that might affect the economics of my life. When my sense of personal worth comes from my net worth, I am vulnerable to anything that will affect that net worth. Fascinating. But work and money, per se, provide no wisdom, no guidance, and no limited degree of power and security. All it takes to show the limitations of a money center is a crisis in my life or in the life of a loved one. Money-centered people often put aside family or other priorities, assuming everyone will understand that the economic demands come first. Oh. I have a test for you to find out that this is true. You guys that are working with me and like are wanting to make a ton of money, which you probably will make way more money than you think you can if you follow the principles that I'm talking about in this series. And just follow my advice and counsel and the things that I'm asking you to do anyway, and just uncover in your life. So I have a test for you though. If you're married or in a relationship, or any relationship really, it could even be like boyfriend, girlfriend relationship, spouse, could be other family, extended family, whatever. Go to that relationship, the other stakeholder in that relationship, and go say to them, hey, like spouse, for example, just say, hey, whenever I'm in the house, I'm actually going to be on my phone, and I'm going to do that because I need to make us more money, because I care about you. So because of that, I'm not going to talk to you any time I'm home, because I have to make money. So until we have a certain net worth, it's just not, I can't focus on our relationship. I can't spend time doing it. I have to be on my phone, even if I'm home. See how quickly that lasts. Because like our spouses don't need more money, typically, unless they're money-centered themselves or think they are. Whereas what they need is attention. What they need is priority. What they need is expectations. What they need is communication, right? All of those things only can happen and occur if you have a principle center and view money making through a principle centered lens. Now, I'm not saying I don't care about making a ton of money. In fact, I think you should make an ungodly amount of money relative to what people even think is possible. I think you have a duty and obligation to go make so much money that you don't know what to do with yourself and that you have to give it away. and you have to use it to influence people's lives for good. I think you have to do that. I think that's an obligation, but I only think that that's an obligation that highly ambitious people have if they are focusing and absolutely incessant on living their lives according to true principles. If they're not, then you will be a dangerous force to be reckoned with that will find yourself in hell, if not in this life, and I'm sure in another, maybe. So, interesting with this money-centeredness here. I know one father who was leaving with his children for a promised trip to the circus when a phone call came for him to come to work instead. He declined when his wife suggested that perhaps he should have gone to work. So he was going to, guy was going to go take his kids to the symphony, or to the circus, and work called and said, hey, I need you to come to work. He declined. So he said no. When his wife suggested that perhaps he should have gone to work, he responded, the work will come again, but childhood won't. For the rest of their lives, his children remembered this little act of priority setting, not only as an object lesson in their minds, but as an expression of love in their hearts. I find that really amazing. The work will come again, but the childhood won't. Really, really powerful. So work-centeredness is another one, right? Many people become workaholics because their identity and their self-worth are wrapped up in their work. Their security is vulnerable to anything that happens to prevent them from continuing in it. Their guidance is a function of the demands of work. Their wisdom and power come in limited areas of their work, rendering them ineffective in other areas of their life. Possession-centeredness is really interesting because it's possession of things, or also like titles and things like that, which is really super fascinating, I think. I'm not going to go super into the rest of these right now. I'll get into them next time, because what I want to focus on making these, about 30 minutes or so, about a drive to area or so. But guys, if you like this stuff, please share it and tell me how you're feeling about it. Actually comment, share, give the reviews so that more people can see it, and especially if they're people that you're wanting to work with, or that you're wanting to have the type of influence that the principles from the 7 habits have. I love talking about this stuff, but even if I became an expert in these things, it's not me that is actually having an influence. It's just those who embody the true principles of those who embody a life of principle-centered living, and the impact that has when then you create interdependent relationships revolving around it. Those who embody that type of life, they literally are just a voice and a mouthpiece for truth. They are not the truth themselves, yet at least. So I'm just really grateful for this stuff, and if you like it, make sure to share, and make sure also to comment on the YouTube video and like and subscribe, so that the algorithm is favorable and gets to more people. And I'm just really grateful, you guys, for listening and following along on this journey of mine, because it is a journey for me first and foremost. And I'll see you guys in the next one.